While we were finishing 127 hours, I accepted the Olympic opening ceremony. It's basically a 2-year job. I had one obligation during, which is to direct this stage play at the National, Frankenstein. Kind of accepted that that was a sabbatical I'd have to take during the 2-year period. This team that was going to do the Olympics was built out of those of us who'd made 127 hours, basically. And it became clear as soon as we started it that a sabbatical was a very good idea. You've got to keep working. And that was wonderful about doing Frankenstein. Christian and I began talking about also what we would want to do as a film should the Olympics ever finish. We had this script called Trans, which Christian had optioned and I'd read a couple of years before, and I'd never been able to let go of. I felt very strongly that John Hodge, whom I'd worked with a number of times, should work on it. So we started these meetings with John, and John started working on it while we were working on the Olympics. We did have in mind that we would take another sabbatical from the Olympics in order to shoot Trans.
All right, turn over. Please, action.
I don't want you to do the work today.
I've always wanted to make a film with a woman at the centre of it.
I want you to sit back, and I want you to close your eyes.
Beautiful.
I mean, I've made films where women are very important in the film, you know, but they're not at the centre of it, they're not at the heart of it. So what I loved about this was there was a woman at the heart of it, but you didn't realise that at first.
The female seems to be the strongest one because she's coming in with just brain power, you know? But you don't know what she knows, and you don't know who she is, and you don't know why she wants to be a part of it. You just know that they invited her in, and it starts to get really complicated. I want you to think about someone else.
What is this film about?
Who's good, who's bad, it's not quite clear.
The film is about identity,
This is me, actually.
self-possession. It's about who we are as defined by who we remember ourselves being.
It was the opportunity to make a twisty, turny, entertaining, refreshing thriller with Danny. That's the proposition that was put to me. And it was like, yeah, let's do it.
It's an illusion and a revelation at the same time. And you have to try and balance those elements in it, really, as you watch it.
He's got it on him! What are you gonna do with the fucking painting? Just get him to tell us where he put it. Tell us where you left it!
The whole premise of the idea was that there wasn't a woman at the centre of it, but that there is in the end. And I loved that as a way of fulfilling an obligation that I felt very, very strongly about. I've got 2 daughters, and you make all these films, and you have great women in them, but they're basically about guys, and they're about Ewan McGregor or Cillian Murphy or, you know, Dev Patel and James Franco and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's like, it just goes on and on and on in the list. And I became aware that I'd never had made a film with a woman at the centre of it.
I don't want to talk to Simon anymore.
What?
I want to talk to the men who are listening.
The men who hurt him.
I've never had this experience before where I'm walking away going, I honestly have no idea what the audience will think of her. I'm not even sure 100% what I think of her.
Simon wanted the painting, that's it.
For himself.
It's not like he did it for someone else.
Quite sure of that, are you?
Please don't.
She has to use every inch of her ability, linguistic dexterity, beauty, sexual allure, to get these men where she wants them. And to survive, for her, it's actually a question of something much more fundamental than getting one over on men for money or gain or power. This is actually about survival.
Dan and I talked about it often. We didn't want her to just be classic femme fatale noir film where she's a woman being a man in the world, and we didn't want to do that sort of kind of cliche kind of thing. We really wanted her to have more emotion, but most of the time I'm glass.
I wanted to try and update a kind of noir idea, but I didn't want to make something that was very referential or indeed looked like one. I wanted to occupy that world, but actually do it in a modern context and update it. By that I mean emotionally. Because usually in noir there's not much cost emotionally. They're quite icy and chilly, and they're a sealed little iceberg really that floats along nicely.
A couple of years ago now, I got chatting with Danny about something else, in fact, and he said, oh, by the way, there's this project, Trans, which he wanted to steer into a film, and was I interested in doing some work on it? And so I read it, and I remember we'd once talked about it sort of 10 years earlier, not taking it any further. But then reading the script, I was quite intrigued by the notions contained in it and by the setup. And the more I talked to Danny and Christian about it, the more I felt that this was definitely worth exploring, definitely worth having a shot at and seeing if we could reshape it and turn it into something worth watching.
Just let's fix his eye. Let's fix his eye line for where the crowd is that he looks down at.
The thing with Danny is that he's always looking for an unusual way to do something. All the locations we went to, anything that was at all mainstream or boring, we just walked away. He also wanted to not make it a sort of very London-based film. He wanted to make it just a sort of a world that's very interesting to look at and play with the idea of whether you're viewing someone in a trance or they're not in a trance, whether they've been hypnotised or not. So it's been a really fine balance to try and find interesting looks that don't look like London, that are extraordinary, that are slightly warped, like you're looking through someone or looking inside someone's head without it being too overt, really.
I've watched some contemporary films where it's so stylish, but you don't actually see the characters because you're paying so much attention to how stylish the clothes are or the sets are or whatever. But I think with Danny, one of the things that pushes the story forward always and locks you in as a viewer is that you're actually experiencing something through the characters and through the dialogue and through their conversations. So you have to pay attention to those things, which means the design part of it can't really take over. So it's sort of finding that line between making things interesting and not boring run-of-the-mill.
I heard Danny Boyle and I read the title Trans and I thought it's going to be a movie set in the 80s about drugs and dancing for some reason. Because you just equate him. And then read it and was completely blown away by this mind-bending, genre-bending, psychological heist movie.
Just do it again and stay in frame, just stay dirty on camera, right? It's not really about gangsters in a way. They're an engine that's necessary to drive a section of the plot. Originally, we were going to do it in New York with an English actress, So we were always thought, should we do it in London with an American actress, or should we do it in New York with an English actress? But I always wanted her to be from outside that community, that she was an outsider. And that's very important that she's no one to turn to. And Rosario felt like a wonderful presence with these two guys. And then you've got to hope that they're equals who can battle it out. And in their different ways, I think they are.
I've never seen that done like this before. I love Elizabeth, but I'm really scared of her. I think she's the scariest person I've ever played.
Something the matter?
Of course not.
She does play the two guys, but what you hopefully ultimately discover is that she's playing it for almost noble reasons. There's a goodness, actually, at the end of the film, which is utterly surprising.
Where is it? Please, I can show you. Getting dressed.
It has been interesting and surprising and uncomfortable sometimes to work with Danny because he'll get you to do the weirdest things at times. And then after a while you start to become free in that and you start to really explore the boundaries of what's strange and what's odd, especially with a film like this.
I always thought James might be a bit young for it. But actually then we met and talked, and I thought, no, this will be really interesting, because I think what it does is it makes him older, the part. It's a kind of older part, really, in a way. And it was really interesting the way he grew into it. And I said to him while we were shooting, you do look older than I've ever seen you look before, which is not a compliment they often recognise, because, it's their work. But he was wonderful in that way. And I wanted him to do it Scottish, because I have a love of the Scottish accent, I'm like, and he doesn't get asked that many times. He was saying he doesn't get asked that many times to do it in his native tongue, really.
So where's she gone? Huh? Don't let her get away, Simon, not after all this.
Vincent is as good an actor as you'd ever find on this planet. He's a lovely guy, not at all like what you'd think. He's a sweetheart, he calls himself an actress. He's very kind of self-deprecating, but his work, goodness me, when he works, it's right there.
Danny, he does this very modern kind of cinema, I think we can say that, but in the same time he comes from a theater world. So his relationship to acting and actors in general, and even the script and everything is very organic.
If you wish that we'd never met, I can make it go away, Frank. All you have to do is touch the screen. Press right here. And follow my voice.
And the delight for me in this film is it's not obvious which of these three characters has the insurmountable obstacles to overcome. The one whose quest it is, and one of the delights was that you begin to work it out real time with them about who's going to actually be the ultimate centre of the film.
You will gamble, lie, cheat, and steal. Steal for her a painting. Simon, a painting for the woman you hurt. For the woman you left behind.
One of the reasons I think we enjoyed it, making the film so much, is that it was a release from the obligation of being wholly responsible in creating a picture for the whole family of Britain with the Olympic opening ceremony. This is for the adults within the Pleasure Dome. And with all the films that we've made, we try to make the experience as intense, as visceral, as alarming as possible, but it is an act of pleasure. And we try to exercise that in the making of the films, and hopefully people's experience of the film is intensely pleasurable.
I remember everything.
If you have the right person, if you get a hold of them, dig right in. If you get them under your spell, if you work hard and take your time, you can make them want to do almost anything.
You think you're in control of everything, like you think you're in control of what you're going to say, but you do not know what you're going to say next, really. But does some part of your brain know that? And of course, one of the ideas in the film is that she gets in there.
Went and met with a couple hypnotherapists. I got hypnotized. We had a hypnotist that came to us when we were doing the rehearsal period so that everybody else could also have that experience. What's in the wardrobe, Simon?
I've been helping them with those aspects of research which impinge on the study, and yes, what they're saying and what they're doing with the film, it's fundamentally sound.
Is there a gun?
Yes.
Do you think you can use it?
My character is what is referred to in the business of hypnotherapy or hypnosis. He's referred to as a virtuoso.
There are 5–10% of us who are highly suggestible. And these are the people that Darren Brown picks out. Because when you watch his stuff or you watch a great stage hypnotist at work, it's not fake. You can see these people are not actors and they are not acting. So you think, how does that work? It's hugely entertaining, and interestingly, it's very controlled in this country, because it clearly has a power that has to be controlled. There's a censor attached to hypnotism. They're only allowed to do certain things because they could get people to do virtually anything. And that, you think, oh, that's really interesting thing to make a film about.
Please, Simon, come down. You got it all wrong. It's not what you think.
You walk across a wide open space, exactly the sort of place which might once have made you panic.
Hypnosis is based on two things in practice. It's a hypnotic state, a trance-like state, which is to do with focusing of attention, being absorbed in thoughts and ideas. And then on top of that, you have suggestion, which is the way you produce the phenomena of hypnosis.
He's in love with you?
We call it transference. One thing that I came across, and when I met with a couple hypnotherapists, they all had this complete confidence because it's like, I'm here because you want help and I can help you. It was always across the board. It was never a question of anyone being like, well, let's see if we get along. No, it's like, I know the secrets to your brain. You just don't understand how you think and why you choose this behavior, but I do. Now, I want you to relax, Simon.
I like your voice.
And now your mind is starting to think. So think about those keys. And you now can feel them in your hand.
We've often talked about the film as being an act of hypnosis in itself. You know, one of the things that the film sort of does is hypnotize the audience. And pursuing that analogy, you could consider the opening to be almost like, you know, a hypnotic induction.
The shape, the metal, and you can see the color.
The burden on Rosario was trying to find enough variety for a kind of Hamlet-type part. Huge amount of dialogue as she drives these hypnotism scenes. And she was amazing, actually. There's a beauty about the way that she presents it vocally.
And you can feel them in your pocket, exactly as they were.
She's really good. She's really, really good. She's got a very calming, soothing quality that would be easy to open up to in a kind of sort of psychiatry kind of a way, I think.
And the radio plays some forgotten song.
I mean, I've had to sit there for, 10 minutes while she sort of hypnotherapizes me. And it is quite soothing and soporific. And if I'd let myself, I think I could drift off quite happily.
She has a beautiful voice, and she has a lot of lines, because she goes through those moments, and plus a lot of what has to do with hypnotherapy in the movie is actually explained by her character, because she's a doctor, really.
Elizabeth is very still. And also my voice would be different. I use more of this sort of voice. I can be very deep and very kind of strong, and it makes me feel very American sometimes, which I had lots of moments on this set of just being like, I'm so American. Just so aggressive, and I'd have to sometimes really pull that back and be softer.
The whole film's based around hypnotism and a voice that hypnotizes, as well as a very beautiful woman. And what Danny actually wanted to achieve from the voices was a really rich, broad, hypnotic sound.
Close your eyes.
Especially in the trance sequences, where Rosario is actually putting James to sleep and going into James's mind and trying to find out where the painting is. In those scenes, it was really important to get the mic very, very close. So the mic was literally on the edge of frame, because obviously the closer we can get the mic to the voice, the richer it is.
I said to Simon, the sound recordist, you've got to be obsessive. I mean, he is an obsessive man. And I encourage that obsession about recording it so that it was recorded almost like it's in space. There is nothing. You don't hear anything. And occasionally something would happen, like a door would open, or that wasn't meant to happen, and you're listening and it's like, what was that? And it's the outside world. But he did an amazing job, because you've got this just beautiful voice running through it, and you can put anything you want on it like that. You can add any kind of element to it. So I've never had that kind of that amount of detail paid to the voice before, but it is something that's very very important in the film.
I want you to sit back. And I want you to close your eyes.
There is a painting. It's by Rembrandt. Storm on the Sea of Galilee, it's called. And he's in it.
The great thing about Danny is that he's very visually aware. He has loads of images and pictures which he brings to the table from the start.
No piece of art is worth a human life.
Both the visual look and the cutting style of the movie revolve around, what you begin to learn, what the story begins to show you.
So it's just a 5-second lead on it this time, guys. It's more classical than you might expect, and also the element of it, of trance in it, you're not aware of stylistically. It's not like black and white, or a certain kind of color grading is this.
I had this dream.
Wasn't a dream.
And we wanted the ability to float. Memories can slip into the timeline, and they don't look like memories, if you like. They just look like a present-day experience.
I was talking to people and they were asking, how was he shooting it? And I'd watch, Anthony putting some weird metal filter thing in front of the camera.
Camera movement is quintessential for Danny and I. On any film it is, whether it's handheld, of course, whether it's tracking, but also which direction.
The idea of the look of the film overall was that you can't quite trust what you're seeing some of the time. And at other times you're locked inside something which is a complete trance, really.
Where did you say they were?
In the wardrobe.
What's in the wardrobe, Simon?
What Danny's trying to do with the film is to try and find ways in the design to sort of play with the idea that whether you're looking at something really straight or not. So sometimes we shoot a lot through glass or bending perspex, so that just the first couple of images are really slightly strange. It's a sort of tricky thing to do, because actually what you really want to do is to do it very subtly, rather than say someone's in a trance. You just want to see the real world slightly warped or twisted or strange.
There was a clear confidence between the way that Anthony and Danny work. They've worked together multiple times, and They had a very clear idea about what they were shooting and how they were shooting it, and it felt very assuring to see their dynamic.
Thank you guys, here we go. Everybody ready? And action!
Each film we do has a different palette, has a different alphabet, and this is another one of those.
I think they're kind of perfect for each other. They've both got a ridiculous amount of energy and are really enthusiastic and really generous with that energy too, so it becomes quite infectious to be around the pair of them.
When you work with people that are really invested in what they do and they're passionate about what they do, it's easy. And that's the way it should be. I think movie making in terms of relationship between people on set should be easy.
The play is actually not in exhibiting a stylistic difference between these worlds, it's actually disguising it. And it's also an acknowledgement that it's absolutely actor-based, and we let them play their cards in the way that they want, rather than have a style that you kind of savagely impose on a story or on a situation, like in Slumdog or 127 Hours.
You would forget, actually, that the camera was there, and it would just be about this wonderful scene work that you were doing.
Even though it becomes like very visual and original and even eventually baroque, it always has a meaning, you know. So the frame might be different and modern and everything, but it always tells the story.
We try to keep the films under $20 million so that we can keep control of the film. You can take a punt on an idea that's actually apparently balmy, but something hidden inside you tells you, try it. And actually, funnily enough, you find sometimes that that's where the best material in a film lies. Because if you're going to do a film about the interior of the mind, you can use cinema to go anywhere. And if you do it well enough, people will go there with you. And that's one of the exhilarations of cinema, is that it's not just a photocopy of life.
We are extremely honoured to be selling Francesco de Goya's wonderful work of Witches in the Air.
In terms of the stolen piece of art itself, I guess the most significant thing about it is that it's a Goya.
Goya is the first great psychological painter. He's the painter who's prepared to go in the bull ring and find out psychologically what is that about, not just draw a tableau of the bullfight. He tries and shows what's inside their mind. And because we've had the chance over centuries since him to absorb him, these images, which are unbearable to look at sometimes, have become actually very beautiful. We find great comfort in them because he has the courage to go there and say, if you feel like this, you're not alone, that you're not isolated. And that's what you look to artists to do, to say you're not alone. Beauty in art is everywhere, and for me is everything. The real stolen paintings, and there are some and they're very important in the film, you could have replicated one of those, but you would not have the real one to refer to. You'd only have prints or photographic copies to refer to. And we wanted it to feel truly authentic, the painting. So we wanted to choose one that hadn't been stolen yet, and that we could go and study it.
Come on! Please, everybody out!
It's hard to trust any reproduction, really, certainly in terms of the colours. So nothing really beats standing in front of the painting.
There's a light quality and a texture quality to a lot of paintings that you couldn't do if you wanted to print, do a fake print copy of it.
An important part of the work for me is to research the materials and the pigments that he used, which aren't necessarily the same as those in use now. They tend to be a bit more toxic and dangerous, so you have to be quite careful.
We hummed and hawed about which of the Goya paintings to use. We went for the Flying Witches, which is just a sort of exotic, weird painting of a person being lifted up by these three witches in tall hats.
There's a character at the bottom of the painting who is underneath the witches who are carrying away this man, and I don't know what they're going to do to him. They're going to molest him, or they're going to tear him apart, or I don't know what they're going to do to him. But there's this other character at the bottom who's got his head underneath a cloth, trying to pretend that it's not happening. And that's almost what my character does throughout the entire film.
It just felt like, in terms of sort of the mind games that go on in the film, that was a really perfect picture to choose. Danny wanted to not make a very London-based film. He wanted to make it just a sort of a world that's very interesting to look at. There's a sequence, a dream sequence, where Simon is on He's on holiday in France and he arrives, it says, at this big house.
They come to a special, what's called a special building, really, which actually houses the lost paintings. And anyway, we were looking, and Mark Tilsley said, do you know Le Corbusier's church in Ronchon? We looked at it and it was just incredible, and I think we looked at pictures of it and we said, that's it, we've got to go there.
This location is one that has always been really important to Danny. It just fits my character's mind so well. It was constructed during the period where Picasso was the height of modern art, and it's very much like the inside of Picasso's mind. It's all askew and it's all jammed up. None of it fits, but it really does. And that's sort of the inside of Simon's brain.
The most amazing bit of which is for James's character. In Rembrandt's Storm on the Sea of Galilee, he paints a self-portrait of himself in the middle of the painting, a little figure in the middle of the painting who's looking directly at you, out of the canvas, looking at the viewer. And that was a revelatory moment for James's character.
The people that are trying to find out what he's forgotten don't realise that what he needs to remember is far more profound than just where this painting is.
And that's a wonderful scenario, the idea of lost paintings, which are linked to the criminal underworld, to set our film about another painting that goes missing, really. And where will you find it? And you don't find it in Picasso's mind, you find it in James's mind.
I remember that day.
The final film is made in the editing, and it doesn't matter what anybody tells you about the importance of this, that, everything. Editing is everything, really. You can change a film, you can rescue a film. It's one of the wonders of our world.
From my point of view within the script, I don't like to see a script where you're writing about seeing a particular camera angle or a particular behaviour about an actor. I think that the script should just lay it out, and then everyone else has got to give their own interpretation on it depending on what their function is, whether it's behind the camera or in front. They make up their own mind for it.
One of the reasons Danny's such a great director is because he's a great leader. You try and create this environment in which everyone is completely immersed in the telling of this story, and you have absolute faith that whatever bumps in the road you may or may not experience, you'll get there in the end.
As a director, you should never try and do an editor's job, just as you wouldn't expect them to do your job. And I think that about all the levels of the crew. I don't expect to be able to tell the cinematographer or the designer. You express this instinct or ambition, and then you hire them for their skill in order to try and not just deliver that, but improve on it as well. I expect them to be interventionist. The last thing that's useful is for them to be obedient. They are all filmmakers in their own right. You want them to make their own film, and your job then is to pull all these different instincts together in one.
Something we wanted to do was to have a kind of constant uncertainty for the characters and of what is truth. Part of the film is about memory and how memory can be manipulated by someone else and by ourselves, by our consciousness trying to remember things differently from the way they actually happen, the way we all do in normal life.
In a film like this, everyone's interpreting things in their own way. I'm just seeing the rushes turning up and sort of deciphering it for myself. There's a lot of reflective surfaces, and there's a lot of people reflected in those surfaces, and often it seems as if they're almost having conversations with their other selves. To edit it, it's great fun because there's lots of jigsaw pieces. You could make people clearly guilty from the start if you wanted to, or you could hold that information back completely. But what we're also finding is that we are showing some of the things that make people guilty very early on, but because they're not sure what's real, they no more trust that than the fake reality, because they haven't worked out which is which yet.
All that work that we all did, and now still within the editing and the sound and all that stuff, you can just still manipulate the movie to go this way or that way. We cut the movie to Elizabeth, or we cut the movie to Simon, or we cut the movie to Frank. Like you could really do it from each of their different perspectives.
I keep saying, will there be any way of having a screening where we can actually stop it halfway and say, okay, just to check, what do you think is going on now? In twisty films, you always find someone at the end goes, oh yeah, I guessed it after 10 minutes. It's like, no, you didn't. You just think you did because now that it makes sense, you suspected it, and you probably had a number of other theories. For us to watch it, knowing exactly what's going on, to us it seems obvious, but to other people, there's a lot to take in.
Normally, what I try to do with an editor is he or she makes an assembly as the film goes along, so that you can see an arc of the story, and if there's gaps that you can address by reshooting or pickups or whatever, you can do like that. And then I try to leave them alone in the editing room as much as possible, but you still feel very, very close to it. What was exciting about this job, we knew we had to go back to the Olympic opening ceremony, which was going to take then a further 9 months really before we could properly return to edit the film. That's very unusual in filmmaking because the investors, the studios, can't get their money back. It's a huge risk. Somebody could get injured in that time. It's a huge risk. So it's unlikely to ever be repeated. So I'm very lucky to have been able to go through that. Distance is something crucial on films. 99.9% of the people who ever see your film are going to see it for the first time only. They're just going to see it once, knowing very little about it. You, in a way, as the director, are the person least qualified to judge how this film's going to play for a person seeing it the first time, because you've seen it 210,000 times. In the editing process, I was able to maintain that distance for as long as possible. I didn't try to re-involve myself. The editor loses that distance, and your job, if you can pull it off, is to suddenly have the perspective of somebody who can tell the editor, we don't know where we are now. Because I'm unfamiliar with this material, I'm not sure where I am now at this moment. And it was wonderful coming back to it that I did feel there were bits I did not remember, which was a completely unique experience for me. When John Harris, the editor, turned the switch and we watched it for the first time when we came back, I wasn't sure where the story was going sometimes. And I think that's helped us create a finished film, which is, on the surface level, is very complicated. But there's a deeper level of pleasure which is attached to the underlying arc of the story, which you eventually comprehend. And having the gap allowed us to finesse that arc better than we would have done if we'd just edited it straight away. One of the joys of editing is working with music. I wanted the film to be driven along, but also there's a spell that's created. I've been very lucky to work with Rick Smith from the band Underworld. And we'd worked together way back on Train Spotting, and subsequently a number of times he's done an amazing job at pulling together these different elements and driving the film. When we got near the end of it, he said, I think you got to have a female voice at the end of this film, you know. It's very much an attempt to make a film with a woman at the heart of it. This is a serious character with a serious story to tell. Rick approached Emily Sandé. She'd sung Abide With Me for us on the Olympics, and we were big fans of her album. This song that they wrote together is a triumphant, ascendant female voice at the end of the film. It gives you something really good to feel about. Her voice is very truthful, honest, and important, actually, which is a curious thing to say about a film which is a pleasure dome, really, but there's an important value at the end of it as well, which she affirms with her extraordinary voice and Rick's tune.
Hello, Frank. It looks good, don't you think? Hanging on the wall? Now, perhaps someday you'll find me. I hope that you do.
Film is not like a technical exercise. If it was, every film would be a hit because you just get technicians who made it work. They're a mystery, really, and it's lovely to make one that actually deliberately occupies that territory.
Do you want to remember? Or do you want to forget?
Are you ready?
What you try and do is you try and use genre as the mothership, really, that's actually delivering the film to an audience. But then what you do is on board the mothership, you've all sorts of deviant elements which are stretching and bending and twisting and playing with the genre, and explore it really and see how far it will go. I've been very fortunate. For a long time now we've had a stable and ongoing relationship with Fox Searchlight. It's a very creative relationship in terms of script and casting. They get to know you and the way you're working and what you're thinking as you're planning work, but you also get to know them and the way they're going to sell your movie, because I can't think of a company better than Searchlight to release your movie.
I remember the good old days. All you had to do was introduce a man or a woman. Nature did the rest.
Are you gonna try to have sex with me?
No. Well, no.
Doesn't work like that anymore.
Lifeless Ordinary is an attempt to depict the giddiness of love.
you know, of how it is to fall in love and to just lose sense. It's not just like you see the characters losing sense. The film loses sense. It's kind of slightly wild and light-headed. And I love that about it, actually. And it really is a film, technically, literally, inherently about love. And how peculiar it is and what it does to us when we fall in love, you know, what it makes of us, really.
I thought you were going to shoot me!
What? I wouldn't do a thing like that.
Oh, no?
No, man, I'm having a great time!
Oh, good!
And he does sum it up beautifully when he says,
Amaratus pactum laborium.
love is a path of labours.
I just feel like everyone tries to do something different, but they always wind up doing the same damn thing. Sure, we should have turned back, but I wasn't going to. Not now. Trust me. It's paradise.
The Beach is based on a great book by Alex Garland. Fascinating idea of a bunch of Westerners kind of colonising and creating their nirvana, their heaven, in paradise, you know, and certainly in physical and geographical sense, Thailand is paradise for a certain type of Western sensibility. So that felt like a lovely way to make a film about ourselves, but in paradise, if you like, the Garden of Eden, and how that goes wrong, as it does.
4 people are dead. We have to leave now.
Because they are basically acting like colonialists, really. They're just moving to a country and taking what they want from it and not really investing anything back in it. I think that we behaved in a way that we were trying to criticise. We took too many crew from the West. We all flew over there, and we were like an army invading. I mean, it's like 200-300 people, armed with per diems and expectations of a holiday and all this kind of stuff arriving. But you don't get anything out of Thailand itself because you're just kind of parachuting in and planting yourself on it and just using it as a backdrop, effectively. Whereas what we'd learned by the time we did Slumdog Millionaire, we'd learned to take very few people and to try to make the film more like it grew organically out of the land. And I'm grateful to The Beach for having taught me that lesson.
Father, I've got some bad news.
It was a virus. Infection.
Infected with what?
Something in the blood.
28 years later was very interesting because it changed. Everybody said it's a zombie movie. I refused to accept that. We called them the infected, and they were going to behave in a way which wasn't what comes with zombification. They were going to behave very quickly, very aggressively. It was a very frightening rage. And that was our theme, social rage. That this virus, this disease, represented intolerance, social intolerance of each other. That people were living in cities and they were just becoming full of rage at each other, like the red rage that descends in people in traffic jams and things like that. And that's what we set out to make. And we shot the beginning of the film, his movement around London, the deserted London, in July of 2001.
No!
And then we came to actually shoot the film in September 2001. And we'd shot a couple of days and then 9/11 happened, which was extraordinary because it changed the film completely. It changed the nature of the film, it changed the nature of the way you made the film, the way you thought about the film every day. And it became much more about the vulnerability of cities. Suddenly cities felt vulnerable, you know, to attack, to something unknown that you couldn't quite quantify, that was going to hurt you and hurt your loved ones.
Open up!
And it just shows you that you can set out with all sorts of intentions.
Hello!
And events can shift the focus of your film, radically, actually. Millions is the story of two brothers who find a bag of money, a huge bag of money by the side of the railway near where they live.
You can see it too there.
This is real.
And they decide to keep the money.
How much? How much? There's thousands! Millions even!
But it throws up lots of moral dilemmas for them because the younger boy is very religious
I thought it was from God.
and he has visions of saints.
St. Peter died AD 64.
All right, don't remind us.
So he's got a very fertile imagination. And that throws up lots of quandaries about how to do good with the money and how difficult it is to do good with money, which is actually alarmingly true.
Excuse me, are you poor?
In a sense, yes.
Brilliant!
It's a very romantic self-portrait for me. I mean, it's written by someone else, Frank Cottrell Boyce, brilliantly written. But I always imagined myself as the little boy. He's way better looking than I ever was, but he has an instinct that I think I shared, which is an imaginative thing. He lived his life in an imaginative world.
Are you
allowed to smoke then?
You can do what you like up there, son.
So I always imagine myself in there with him.
We have a payload to deliver to the heart of our nearest star. That star is dying. And if it dies, we die.
I love doing sunshine. I mean, space movies break down into two types, really. There's the fantasy ones, like Star Wars, when you can sort of do anything, really. You can invent any kind of creature, you can kind of do anything. There's a much more strict discipline, which is humans in space film, which obviously begins really, I suppose, with 2001. And there are certain rules that are laid down by the people who've worked in that discipline, which are very difficult to avoid. For instance, that a gravity-free environment is a slow-motion environment, which is nonsense. When you watch the space station at work, everybody moves at the same speed. It's the same speed, there's just no resistance. That's the only difference. But of course, for Kubrick to portray it, he chose a kind of poeticized slow motion. So now, if you don't do that, everybody thinks it's wrong. In fact, that is wrong, but it doesn't matter. It's so powerful in the cinema. So they're tricky. And to achieve that in a gravity environment is very, very tough.
We do not have enough oxygen reserves to get us to our payload delivery.
You do get a wonderful sense of being sealed in an environment with a bunch of characters and actors. But that's a lovely thing about it. And it becomes just about those characters and what they experience in the journey.
The last infected human died 6 months ago.
Have you come into direct contact with the infected?
28 weeks later, I was unable to direct because I was directing Sunshine, and it was taking, space movies take so long. But we got Juan Carlos Fresnadillo to direct it, and I thought it was a lovely development of the idea, really. There's some wonderful stuff in it.
Execute Code Red.
I remember going to see the premiere, and it was really wonderful to sit and watch it. I realised much more about what the appeal of the first one was. You know, because I was so involved in the first one, you don't recognise its appeal, really, because you're just making it. But in watching this one, I got a sense of why people enjoyed the first one so much.
Blue John Canyon, 4.5 hours to the Big Drop rappel. I aim to take 45 minutes off that.
It's Eric!
With 127 hours, which is really the Aaron Ralston story, if you like, there's this extraordinary physical chamber that he's caught in, which we went to and visited and shot at for a little while. But it's not the kind of place you can shoot at for a long time. It's very difficult to get to. It's very inhospitable. So we built the set. They have this LiDAR scanning now, which allows you to mirror exactly an environment and be able to rebuild it in the studio. And Susarat Lalab, our designer, rebuilt the canyon and a huge section of it. And we built it in a way that was as restrictive as the original.
Help! I'm in the canyon!
When James Franco, the actor, had to go into it, we wanted it to make it feel like if you shut your eyes and then open them again, it could be the place itself. And he had very little interaction with anyone, really, apart from the cameraman. Not many people could get in there once he was in, and he tended to go in all day. So it's an isolation that helped him build the sense of what it is for this guy to be alone for 6 days.
Mom, Dad, I haven't appreciated you as I know that I could. I love you guys.
And then to believe in redemption, believe in the value of his other life, you know, the life of the other people who love him. The value of that is his redemption, really, in a way, and he will sacrifice anything to get back to that.
Have you ever been hypnotized before?
Whatever is in his head, she can find.
Now, I want you to relax, Simon.
What can you make him do?
Anything.
Trance begins like an art heist movie.
Stop right there.
It has a kind of amnesia thriller.
I can't remember! I got hit on the head! That you remember.
And it also has a classically femme fatale noirish element to it.
Two of you planning it together. She put that there. It's not real.
So you've got these different genres going, but in fact it's none of those things.
He wants the painting for himself.
I don't believe that.
It's not really about a stolen painting, it's actually about stolen memories. It's not an amnesia thriller. It's actually a film about forgetting as a choice, as a behavioural choice. It's about denial and repression.
Why did you lie to me?
And it's not the classic femme fatale either, because actually She's the opposite of cold. There's a story.
You want to remember. Us. Steal for her a painting. Leave.
Stop right there.
Elizabeth,
I'm not Elizabeth.
you made me forget.
How do you feel about going home?
Oh, fuck off. If Frank wants to see you, innit?
You must have taken it. You must have put it somewhere.
I can't remember. I got hit on the head.
There's no drug therapy for amnesia.
Hypnosis. He said it might work.
Of course not. Have you ever been hypnotized before?
No, at least not that I can remember.
Think about those keys. Where did you say they were?
In the wardrobe.
Whatever is in his head, she can find.
I don't want to talk to Simon anymore.
But
Hypnotherapy will work.
But?
Only if it's a partnership. I'd like you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Inside this package is the memory that you have been waiting for. He's afraid that once he's remembered, you'll kill him.
How would we make him feel more secure?
In an ideal world, he'd kill you all.
I remember that day.
Oh my God, you all right?
Elizabeth?
Now you are the problem.
But I may also be the solution.
You'll fuck him just to get him to remember?
I just imagined that I'd been here before. I could have sworn that I'd met that waiter before.
There's a problem. He's jealous.
How long have you been fucking Frank?
I know what you want.
How did you know?
He told me.
Elizabeth, they're going to kill me.
Go upstairs to Frank's bedroom.
It's in a red Alfa Romeo in the underground car park in Marble Arch. She has been using you from the start, Simon. It's my gun. It's empty.
It's in the other car, the red one.
Go and get it. We'll keep an eye on her. Promise. Oh! Fuck. Yeah. You make me forget.
What did she look like?
You. I don't want to. Bring it to me.
Hello, Frank. Press right here to forget.
Hi. I'm Eugene.
I'm sorry.
Eugene Wallerstein. Reservation. Eugene.
Unfortunately, sir, it looks like you have been double booked.
Okay,
But it looks like we can give you an upgrade, so.
Oh, wow.
Let's go. You all set? Enjoy your stay.
Sorry.
Oh, elevator. That way. Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Hi, Shelly. It's Eugene, your neighbor. I don't know if you got my other messages, but I was just calling to say hello. And I know you've been very, very busy. And I've been thinking a lot about what you said. And I think it's great that we get to be friends. I'm in Washington, and it's pretty interesting. There's lots of things. If you have a moment, give me a call. It'd be fun to talk to you. All right, talk to you later. Bye. Hello? Can you say something? No, hi. No,
What
this
do you
was,
want? Oh my God,
my
stay away
room,
from me.
and I was just...
No. Stay away from me.
Just please, everything's fine.
Oh my God.
Are you okay? Are you okay? I'll be right there.
Yeah, sorry for the inconvenience, sir. There was a report of yelling and a crash coming from your room.
Yelling? Oh. If I hear anything, I'll... Good night. Miss, are you okay? Yeah, you're okay. Hi.
What happened?
You slipped and there's a bit of an accident and you fell and you kind of whacked your head there. I'm Eugene.
You're what?
Eugene. And that's my name. I was just...
Thank you for helping me.
You're welcome. You just slipped. It was just you fell. Would you like some tea? Maybe I'll get you some tea. What's your name?
Alice.
Alice. That's a beautiful name. Oh, so wonderful. There's so many kinds of tea here. I feel like the Mad Hatter. English breakfast, green tea, Earl Grey, English breakfast. I already said English breakfast. Well, I guess the main thing I'm thinking of is whether or not you want like herbal or black tea. I guess there's just two distinct.